At the trial, my younger sister brought her own attorney to demonstrate I was bankrupt. My parents testified they had supported me every step of the way. Mom started crying on the witness stand. Dad agreed with everything she said. My attorney, Rebecca Chen, remained completely composed until Judge Martinez stopped the proceedings and announced, "I've examined the financial documents and tax filings. Someone in this courtroom is committing perjury. We gave you every opportunity, and you squandered it all." My mother, Patricia Henderson, cried dramatically, pressing a silk handkerchief to her perfectly dry eyes, while everyone in the federal bankruptcy courtroom in Denver watched in silence. My father, Richard Henderson, sat beside her, his expression carefully arranged in disappointment, nodding seriously as their attorney presented documents claiming I owed my younger sister $2.3 million. "I'm Olivia Morrison, founder and CEO of TerraScan Solutions. Today I sat at the defendant's table in a simple charcoal suit next to my attorney, Rebecca Chen, who stayed perfectly calm even as the opposing side performed their act. The lawyer my sister hired stood confidently, declaring my company was failing, unable to repay the substantial investment she had made years earlier through a family agreement authorized by our parents, and the court needed to intervene to protect her interests as a creditor. The entire room leaned in. My sister sat upright, a subtle, triumphant smile on her face. Then Judge Martinez suddenly stopped reviewing the petition. He removed his reading glasses, examined the newly filed financial records and tax documents more carefully, and looked up. His voice carried through the silent courtroom. "I've examined the financial documents and tax filings. Someone in this courtroom is committing perjury." My sister's confident expression disappeared instantly. Mom's tears stopped abruptly. Dad went rigid. I sat quietly, waiting for the moment I had been preparing for over the past decade. Have you ever had a family member try to sabotage the success you worked so hard to achieve? Share your experience in the comments below. I read every single one. Make sure to follow along, because this story is just beginning, and what happens next will shock you even more than what you've already heard. I stood silently in that courtroom, waiting for the moment I had prepared for during 10 long years of struggle. The origins of this confrontation traced back to our family home in Denver, Colorado, where the Hendersons had established themselves in commercial real estate and energy development. My father, Richard Henderson, owned one of the most prominent firms in the region, specializing in property acquisition, mineral rights, and luxury development projects throughout the Rocky Mountain corridor. He had started modestly after graduating, but grew aggressively, transforming family connections into multi-million-dollar transactions that shaped resort communities and protected wilderness areas. Mother, Patricia Henderson, concentrated on social prominence, leading charitable organizations, organizing fundraising events at the country club, and making sure our family name appeared regularly in society publications. From the very beginning, my younger sister Claire was the favorite. As the youngest child, born 7 years after me, she received attention I never experienced. Dad frequently brought her to business meetings with associates even while she was still in high school. I remember one particular summer when she was 16, he took her to a negotiation lunch at an upscale steakhouse downtown, introducing her as the next generation of Henderson Enterprises, while the executives smiled approvingly. "This one has the natural talent," he'd announce, patting her shoulder. "She'll expand everything beyond what I've accomplished." He purchased whatever she needed to succeed: private business tutors, a brand new luxury vehicle for her 18th birthday, internship positions at the firm where she shadowed him personally. Business partners knew her by name, and Dad ensured she participated in strategy meetings, learning to analyze market patterns for commercial properties. The favoritism was obvious. He recognized in Claire the ideal combination of charisma and drive to advance the traditional family enterprise without challenging established methods. I had chosen a different direction. After completing my undergraduate degree, I enrolled in law school at the University of Colorado, assuming it would complement Dad's world of contracts and property transactions. But during my second year, I became fascinated with environmental technology, specifically software that could monitor and safeguard natural resources in real time, preventing exploitation while enabling responsible development. I spent countless nights researching artificial intelligence systems for tracking snowpack levels, soil degradation, and wildlife migration patterns. The possibilities seemed enormous tools that could assist federal agencies, like the Bureau of Land Management, in making more informed decisions. When I turned 26, I assembled a comprehensive business plan for Terrascan Solutions and presented it to Dad in his corner office with its view of the mountains. The room had the scent of leather and polished wood, with awards from successful deals displayed on the shelves. I outlined the projections, the market opportunity for precise resource monitoring in challenging terrain, and how it could secure government contracts. But would my father see the vision I had worked so hard to develop? Or would he dismiss it entirely, just like he had dismissed me my entire life? Dad flipped through the business plan, chuckling halfway through. "This is an interesting hobby, Olivia, but it's completely unrealistic. Technology like this? It's not dependable. Focus on what we understand. Physical property, tangible assets." He leaned back in his chair, gesturing around the office. "Come work here full-time. Support Claire. She's the one who'll take over the primary business. You can manage legal matters for us. Keep everything within the family." I pushed back, explaining the demand driven by environmental regulations and federal land oversight. "There's significant money in sustainable solutions, Dad. This isn't just a side project." He shook his head, his smile fading into that familiar stern expression. "You're abandoning a secure future for computer fantasies. Claire understands the legacy. Help her strengthen it instead of pursuing pipe dreams that'll leave you penniless." The disagreement intensified. Mother joined in, supporting him as she always did, worrying about public perception. "What will people say if our daughter quits everything for some startup?" Claire, home from university that weekend, listened quietly but with a satisfied look, knowing her position remained unshaken. I held my ground. "I'm not returning to play backup. I'll build this myself." Dad's final statement was cold. "Fine. But when it collapses, and it will, you'll come back, and then you'll accept whatever position Claire decides to give you." I walked out of that office, out of the house, and never asked for their approval or financial support again. The door closed behind me with a finality that would echo through the years ahead. I packed everything into my old Honda and drove into the foothills outside Denver, renting a small one-bedroom apartment in a modest complex near the canyon entrance. The place was basic thin walls, an outdated kitchen, and a view of the mountains that reminded me why I was doing this. Rent consumed half my savings in the first month, but the location provided constant access to the terrain I wanted to protect and analyze. Those initial months blurred into endless work sessions. I taught myself programming from the ground up, beginning with online courses in Python and geographic information systems. Nights were dedicated to studying federal regulations, Bureau of Land Management protocols, environmental impact assessments, and public land policies governing millions of acres across the western states. I printed stacks of documents, highlighted sections on data requirements for resource monitoring, and created spreadsheets modeling snowmelt patterns from publicly available geological survey data. Money depleted rapidly. I accepted freelance work, writing basic reports for small environmental organizations just to afford groceries and internet service. Coffee became essential. Sleep became optional. The laptop ran constantly as I developed the initial prototype, an application that analyzed satellite imagery and ground sensor data to predict erosion risks on resort slopes and public trails. Little did I know that this prototype would lead to both my greatest betrayal and my ultimate breakthrough. That prototype represented my first glimmer of hope. I presented it to a potential collaborator I connected with through an online startup community, someone who claimed relationships with outdoor industry investors. We met at a coffee shop in a Denver suburb, and he appeared enthusiastic, offering to co-develop the platform and introduce me to funding sources. I shared the complete code and detailed technical specifications, trusting our verbal agreement. Weeks passed with no communication. Then I discovered my exact interface and algorithms launched under his company name at a regional technology conference. He had stolen everything, filed for a provisional patent using my work, and completely cut me out. The money was nearly exhausted by then, and that theft left me with nothing except screenshots and emails that proved nothing legally binding. I refused to quit. I reconstructed the core system from memory, improving it by adding machine learning capabilities to forecast water runoff with greater accuracy. Months of isolation followed, testing algorithms against historical Bureau of Land Management reports on flood risks in the Rocky Mountain backcountry. I survived on instant meals and determination, applying for small grants targeting women in STEM fields, though most applications were rejected due to my lack of established credentials. The second major setback hit even harder. By then, I had hired one part-time developer and secured a pilot project proposal with the Bureau of Land Management Regional Office in Colorado. The objective was to deploy sensors across a test area of public land near a ski resort, feeding real-time data into my platform for improved avalanche prediction and resource management. I invested every remaining resource into field testing, driving up mountain roads in winter storms to install prototypes and calibrate against official weather monitoring stations. The rejection arrived in a formal letter. Insufficient field trial data across multiple seasons. No independent verification of accuracy in variable mountain conditions. They acknowledged the concept's merit but determined it was too premature for federal partnership. Overnight, the contractor left for stable employment, potential investors withdrew, and bills accumulated. My bank account dropped below $1,000. For the first time, I sat in that small apartment staring at eviction warnings, wondering if Dad had been correct. That year, Mom still sent the annual Thanksgiving invitation. Tradition, she called it. I drove to the family home one final time. The table was elaborately set, turkey carved, everyone dressed formally. Conversation remained pleasant until Claire, then home from college, turned to me with that self-assured tone she had perfected. "So, how's the little technology project progressing? Dad mentions these startups typically fail within the first couple years." The words landed exactly as she intended. I looked around the table, no one defended me, just polite waiting for my response. Something shifted quietly inside me. I finished the meal in silence, thanked them politely, and left before dessert. During the drive back up the canyon, I made a decision. No more contact, no more energy wasted justifying myself to them. From that moment forward, everything would change. But I had no idea just how much. From that night on, I dedicated everything to TerraScan. No family updates, no holiday visits, no explanations. The isolation sharpened my focus like nothing else could. The company became my single priority, refining the algorithms, gathering independent data sets, preparing for the day when the technology would stand undeniable on its own merit. The breakthrough came quietly, a modest contract with the Colorado Division of Parks and Wildlife to monitor habitat changes along a river corridor. It wasn't glamorous, just enough revenue to hire my first full-time software engineer and rent a small office space downtown. We refined the platform, integrating more accurate elevation modeling data and partnering with local universities for validation studies on watershed health. Word spread within state agency networks. Soon we secured pilot programs with the Colorado Department of Natural Resources for tracking recreational impact on public lands near popular hiking areas. These projects demonstrated the system's reliability, real-time alerts on trail erosion, water quality changes from runoff, and unauthorized off-road activity detected through satellite verification. Revenue grew steadily, allowing us to expand the team to 9 people and upgrade servers for faster data processing. I married Daniel during this phase, a quiet ceremony in the mountains with only close colleagues present. From then on, I used Morrison professionally for all press releases, conference presentations, and industry recognition. It wasn't about hiding from the world, just creating clear separation from the Henderson name that still carried weight in traditional real estate networks. Interviews in regional business journals referred to me as Olivia Morrison, CEO of TerraScan Solutions, and no one made the connection back to the family I had left behind. The major breakthrough arrived after countless proposal revisions and demonstrations at federal workshops across the western states. TerraScan won a $115 million multi-year contract with the Bureau of Land Management to deploy our AI monitoring system across mountain resource zones nationwide from the Rockies to the Cascades and beyond. The scope was massive. installing sensor networks, integrating with existing government databases, and providing dashboards for decision makers on everything from grazing permits to wildfire risk assessment. Media coverage followed immediately. A feature in a regional business publication highlighted how a Colorado-based startup was revolutionizing public land stewardship. National outlets picked up the story, praising the innovative application of machine learning for conservation without restricting public access. I spoke at industry conferences under my married name, accepted awards on stage as Olivia Morrison, and watched the company valuation climb steadily. Across town in the Henderson family home, Claire overheard Dad mentioning a new competitor named Morrison during a dinner conversation about challenging development projects. He complained that some federal contracts now required advanced environmental monitoring from vendors like this Morrison-led firm, complicating his traditional development timelines. Claire noted the name casually at first, but curiosity got the better of her, and what she discovered would set everything in motion. Later that evening, alone in her room, Claire searched public contract databases, something she frequently did to stay ahead on industry trends for the family business. The Bureau of Land Management Award announcement appeared immediately. TerraScan Solutions, led by CEO Olivia Morrison. Cross-referencing the founding documents and archived news articles took only minutes. The realization struck hard. This was her sister's work, built from nothing into a federal contractor outperforming their legacy operations. The shock transformed into resentment over the following weeks. Claire saw headlines celebrating the innovative woman reshaping resource management, while her own role remained tied to Dad's aging model of property sales and leases. Her position as heir apparent suddenly felt precarious. Business partners started asking Dad about adopting similar technology solutions to remain competitive. She began planting doubts during family dinners, suggesting the success was temporary, that federal contracts were unstable and often overhyped. Mom listened sympathetically. Dad grumbled about disruptive newcomers. Claire proposed a solution, framed as family concern. They could address the situation by enforcing accountability on an old internal investment. She reminded them of the $2.3 million they had transferred through her account years earlier, intended as family support, routed discreetly for potential early backing. Though never formally invested, she argued it could be reframed as an unpaid loan now that the company appeared financially stable. Convincing them required time but not much effort. The narrative fit their long-standing perspective. Intervention was necessary to save me from eventual collapse and preserve family reputation. Claire took charge of finding an attorney willing to file on grounds of that alleged debt, gathering fabricated records to support the claim of default. The plan was established: file for bankruptcy protection on behalf of the creditor, triggering scrutiny that would delay or derail the Bureau of Land Management rollout before anyone realized the true scale of TerraScan's financial stability. A thick envelope from the federal court arrived at the office one morning, marked urgent. I opened it at my desk, expecting routine compliance paperwork. Instead, it was a bankruptcy petition filed against TerraScan Solutions, claiming the company was insolvent and owed $2.3 million to a creditor who had invested early and never been repaid. The creditor listed, Claire Henderson. My stomach dropped. I read the name twice, then scanned the attached documents. A loan agreement dated years back, signatures that vaguely resembled mine, financial statements showing massive losses that bore no resemblance to reality. It alleged a family-backed investment routed through Claire's account for tax purposes, now in default. Shock hit first, then a wave of disbelief. Claire, my own sister, had gone this far. I had built everything without a single dollar from them. Yet here was a fabricated claim designed to force court oversight and halt operations. I reached for my phone to call Rebecca. But first, I allowed myself one moment to feel the full weight of this betrayal. I called Rebecca Chen immediately. She had handled our federal contract compliance from the beginning and knew every detail of the company's finances. I scanned and emailed the filing while still on the phone. Rebecca's voice remained professional, but edged with concern as she reviewed the documents. This is blatant fraud, Olivia. Forged signatures, fabricated accounts, timelines that don't align with any actual transactions. We can dismantle this with audited financial statements and bank records alone. She paused. But here's the concern. The petition itself creates complications. Even if dismissed quickly, the filing becomes public record. It could trigger reviews from Bureau of Land Management partners, delay funding disbursements, or frighten potential private investors. And if the assigned judge has any connections to established families like yours, they might prolong it for appearances. Her warning resonated. Colorado's business community was interconnected. Old money networks overlapped with judicial appointments. A prolonged case could stall our nationwide rollout at the worst possible moment. I drove home early that day, mind racing. Daniel was in the kitchen when I arrived, immediately sensing something was wrong. I handed him the papers without speaking. He read in silence, his expression tightening with each page. "This is insane," he said finally. "Your own sister. After everything you built independently." We sat at the table late into the evening, discussing options. The betrayal stung deepest Claire, positioning herself as the wronged party. Using family history as a weapon, Daniel worried aloud about the practical consequences. Sensor deployments scheduled across multiple states, new employees onboarding, grant milestones approaching. Any hold on payments could force layoffs or miss deadlines, damaging credibility we had fought years to establish. We agreed on aggressive defense. Over the following days, Rebecca coordinated a comprehensive response package. Top-tier audited financials demonstrated healthy reserves and revenue growth. Forensic handwriting experts compared the petition signatures against dozens of my known samples, concluding no match. Bank records from every account, personal and corporate, proved zero transfers matching the claimed amount or timeline. Daniel helped organize timelines, retrieving old emails and tax filings to establish I had never accepted family funds after leaving home. We even prepared sworn statements from early team members confirming self-funded origins. The court date approached. On the morning of the hearing, I arrived at the federal building downtown with boxes of evidence. Rebecca walked beside me, calm and prepared. Across the aisle, my family entered like a coordinated unit. Claire led, dressed sharply, directing her attorney with quiet instructions and confident nods. Mother wore somber colors, her expression carefully arranged in pained disappointment. Father sat upright, projecting the image of a patriarch forced to address a wayward child's mess. The session began. Claire's attorney rose dramatically, painting a picture of irresponsible mismanagement and an unpaid internal family loan now jeopardizing a creditor's rights. He referenced the generous support routed for legitimate business purposes, now ignored, despite repeated requests. I watched their performance, pulse steady but anger simmering beneath. Rebecca remained composed, waiting her turn. And then, everything changed. The courtroom filled steadily, the low murmur of voices mixing with the rustle of papers and occasional coughs. I took my place at the defendant's table, Daniel beside me, his hand resting lightly on mine. Rebecca sat on my other side, organized stacks of exhibits in front of her, calm and focused. Across the aisle, Claire entered first, moving with practiced confidence. She wore a tailored blazer and carried herself with the same quiet assurance she had displayed at family dinners. Mother followed in a dark dress, dabbing her eyes with a tissue before even sitting down. Father came last, posture rigid, giving the impression of a man reluctantly handling a difficult family obligation. The bailiff called the session to order. Judge Martinez entered, nodded to everyone, and took the bench. Claire's attorney stood immediately, voice projecting clearly through the room. "Your Honor, the petitioner Claire Henderson seeks immediate bankruptcy protection for Terrascan Solutions. The company is insolvent and has failed to repay a $2.3 million loan advanced years ago through an internal family arrangement. The creditor has suffered significant financial harm." He gestured toward a stack of documents. "We have loan agreements, promissory notes, and correspondence, showing the debt was acknowledged but never repaid. The company's recent federal contract does not change its underlying financial distress." Mother released a soft sob at the mention of financial distress. Father gave a slow, solemn nod. Claire kept her gaze forward, lips pressed in a line of righteous certainty. Rebecca remained seated, expression neutral, letting them complete the performance. When the attorney sat, Judge Martinez leaned forward. Counsel for the respondent? Rebecca rose smoothly. Your Honor, we have filed a comprehensive response and request dismissal with prejudice. Before we proceed, I ask the court to review the supplemental financial records and tax documents submitted last night. Judge Martinez nodded to the clerk. Several minutes passed while he examined the new pages. The room grew quieter as he read. Then he stopped, removed his glasses, and looked directly at Claire's table. I've examined the financial documents and tax filings. Someone in this courtroom is committing perjury. Claire's shoulders stiffened. Mother's tissue froze midair. Father's jaw tightened. Rebecca stepped forward. Your Honor, we have three primary pieces of evidence demonstrating the petition is fraudulent. She displayed the first exhibit on the screen. The signatures on the alleged loan documents do not match any known samples of Olivia Morrison's handwriting. Forensic analysis by a certified examiner shows clear discrepancies in stroke patterns and pressure. Every signature is forged. Next slide. The claimed investment date falls during Miss Claire Henderson's sophomore year at college. Bank records from that period show no large outgoing transfers from her accounts, nor any corresponding deposits into the company. The evidence was overwhelming. But would it be enough to expose the full extent of my family's deception? Rebecca continued. Final slide. The account number listed as receiving the funds never existed in any bank records associated with TerraScan Solutions or the Henderson family. It appears to have been invented specifically for this filing. Daniel squeezed my hand. I felt his steady presence beside me. Claire's face drained of color. The confident tilt of her chin disappeared. Mother's sobs stopped abruptly, as though someone had flipped a switch. Father stared straight ahead, skin pale. Judge Martinez set the documents down. Miss Chen, do you have anything further? Rebecca shook her head. That is the essence, Your Honor. The petition contains no legitimate debt, no real investment, and no basis for bankruptcy relief. We ask the court to dismiss with prejudice and refer the matter to the U.S. Attorney's Office for investigation of bankruptcy fraud and potential interference with a federal contractor. Judge Martinez looked over the room, then fixed his gaze on Claire's table. The court finds the petition lacks merit and is based on fabricated evidence. The case is dismissed with prejudice. The clerk is directed to forward all materials to the U.S. Attorney's Office for appropriate action. This court will not tolerate attempts to misuse bankruptcy proceedings to interfere with a federal contract or to perpetrate fraud. The gavel came down sharply. Claire sat frozen, eyes wide. Mother stared at the floor. Father's hands gripped the table edge, knuckles white. Rebecca turned to me with a small, relieved nod. Daniel exhaled, his grip on my hand loosening for the first time all morning. I felt the weight of the past decade lift slightly, though the anger still burned beneath. The courtroom began to clear, but the real consequences were only beginning. Federal investigators moved quickly once the referral reached their desk. Agents interviewed Claire's attorney first, presenting the evidence of fraud and the potential for disbarment if he didn't cooperate. Facing serious consequences, he turned over emails, draft documents, and recordings of meetings where Claire had outlined the plan in detail, framing it as necessary to protect family interests from my supposed impending failure. The full picture emerged. Claire had orchestrated everything from fabricating the old loan papers to coaching mother and father on their courtroom roles. Prosecutors built a solid case for bankruptcy fraud, perjury, and attempted interference with a government contract. Claire's options narrowed rapidly. Her attorney negotiated a plea deal to avoid trial and harsher sentencing. She accepted probation, a permanent federal felony record that would follow her for life, substantial fines that drained her personal savings, and restitution orders. But the consequences didn't stop with Claire. The entire Henderson empire was about to crumble. Most devastating for Claire. Father formally revised his estate plans and company succession documents, removing her from any executive role or significant inheritance tied to the business. The golden child status evaporated overnight. The fallout spread to the family firm. News of the scandal traveled through Colorado's interconnected real estate circles. Major clients, developers with pending resort projects requested audits of their partnerships. Several pulled out entirely, citing reputational risk. Banks tightened credit lines after reading press reports. Father spent months trying to stabilize operations, but cash flow suffered as deals stalled. Over the following year, more partners distanced themselves. A key joint venture collapsed when the other party invoked a morality clause in their agreement. Revenue dropped sharply. Father aged visibly, working longer hours to salvage relationships that had taken decades to build. Eventually, with no viable recovery path, he accepted an offer from a larger regional competitor and sold the company at a fraction of its former valuation. The Henderson name lost its dominance in commercial development. What had taken my father 30 years to build crumbled in less than 18 months. Meanwhile, TerraScan Solutions continued its expansion without interruption. The dismissal of the fraudulent bankruptcy petition actually generated positive press stories about the female CEO who overcame family sabotage to build a successful environmental tech company resonated nationally. Several venture capital firms reached out, interested in supporting our next phase of growth. Within 6 months, we secured additional contracts with the National Park Service and the U.S. Forest Service, expanding our monitoring capabilities to include fire risk assessment and endangered species habitat tracking. The team grew to 45 employees. We opened a second office in Portland to better serve clients in the Pacific Northwest. Daniel and I bought our first house, a modern place in the foothills with a home office overlooking the mountains. The view reminded me every morning of how far I'd come from that tiny apartment where I'd taught myself to code. I never heard from my parents again. No apology, no acknowledgement, no attempt at reconciliation. Claire sent one email 6 months after her sentencing, a brief message saying she'd been misguided and hoped I could understand the family pressure. I deleted it without responding. Some betrayals are too fundamental to forgive. Years passed. TerraScan became one of the leading environmental monitoring platforms in North America. We expanded internationally, working with agencies in Canada and partnership programs in Europe. I spoke at technology conferences, mentored young women entrepreneurs, and served on advisory boards for environmental policy organizations. The company that my father had called Computer Fantasies was now worth more than his entire real estate empire had ever been. But the true victory wasn't the money or the success. The true victory was proving to myself that I didn't need their approval, their money, or their name to build something meaningful. I had done it entirely on my own terms. Sometimes I'd drive past the old family home, now owned by strangers after my parents downsized to a modest condo following the business sale. The grand house where I'd felt so invisible looked smaller somehow, less imposing. I felt nothing looking at it, no anger, no sadness, just a quiet acknowledgement of a chapter that had closed completely. Rebecca became not just my attorney but a close friend. She joined TerraScan's board of advisors, helping us navigate complex federal regulations as we expanded. "You know what I admire most about you?" she told me once over coffee. "You didn't just survive what they did, you used it as fuel. Most people would have given up." I thought about that often. There were so many moments during those early years when giving up would have been easier after the first theft of my prototype, after the Bureau of Land Management rejection, during those dark nights staring at eviction notices. The temptation to prove my father right, to accept that I wasn't capable, had been stronger than I'd ever admitted to anyone. But something in me, stubbornness, pride, or maybe just sheer spite, refused to let him have that satisfaction. And in refusing to fail, I'd discovered capabilities I never knew I possessed. I'd learned to code, to navigate federal bureaucracy, to lead a growing team, to pitch to investors, to stand firm when everyone doubted. Daniel often joked that I should write a book about the experience. Female entrepreneur overcomes family sabotage to build environmental tech empire, he'd say. It's got everything: betrayal, courtroom drama, ultimate redemption. People would eat it up. Maybe someday I would. But for now, I was focused on the work. We were developing new algorithms for climate change impact prediction, using machine learning to forecast how rising temperatures would affect water resources in mountain regions over the next 50 years. The potential applications were enormous, helping communities plan for drought, protecting endangered ecosystems, informing policy decisions about water rights. This was the work that mattered. Not revenge against my family, not proving them wrong, but actually making a difference in environmental conservation. The fact that I'd built a successful company was wonderful, but the real satisfaction came from knowing our technology was helping protect the landscapes I loved. One afternoon, my assistant mentioned that someone named Henderson had called, asking to schedule a meeting to discuss potential consulting work. I didn't ask which Henderson it was. Please let them know we're not taking on new clients in that sector at this time, I said calmly. My assistant nodded, understanding immediately. Some doors, once closed, should stay closed. I had built my success by moving forward, not looking back, but the universe had one more surprise in store for me. 2 years after the trial, I was invited to speak at a major environmental technology summit in San Francisco. The keynote address, Innovation in Public Land Management, a case study, would be delivered to over 1,000 industry professionals, government officials, and fellow entrepreneurs. It was the kind of recognition that validated everything TerraScan had accomplished. Daniel came with me, and we made a weekend of it, exploring the city and celebrating how far we'd come. The evening before my presentation, there was a networking reception in the hotel ballroom. I was speaking with a representative from the Canadian Environmental Ministry when I saw her across the room, Claire. She looked different, older. The confident shine gone from her eyes, replaced by something more guarded. She wore a simple business suit, nothing like the designer clothes she'd favored before. She was standing alone near the registration table, holding a badge that identified her as attending on behalf of a small environmental consulting firm I'd never heard of. Our eyes met. She froze. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Daniel noticed my expression and followed my gaze. "Do you want to leave?" he asked quietly. I considered it. It would be easy to walk away, to maintain the wall I'd built, but something made me curious. I excused myself from the conversation and walked toward her. She watched me approach, her expression uncertain, almost afraid. "Olivia," she said softly. I I didn't know you'd be here. I mean, I knew you were the keynote, but I didn't think." She trailed off. "What are you doing here, Claire?" I asked, my voice neutral. "I work for a small firm now. We do environmental compliance consulting for developers. Nothing like what you've built, just helping companies meet basic regulatory requirements." She hesitated. "I'm trying to rebuild. After everything." I waited, saying nothing. She continued, words coming faster. "I know you have no reason to listen to me. What I did was unforgivable. I let jealousy and insecurity turn me into someone I'm ashamed of. The criminal record, losing everything at the firm, watching Dad sell the business. It destroyed our family. And it was my fault." Her eyes were red, but she wasn't crying. This wasn't a performance like in the courtroom. This was something else, genuine remorse. Maybe, or just exhaustion from carrying guilt. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said quietly. "I just wanted you to know that I understand now what I did to you. And I'm sorry." What I said next surprised even me. I looked at my sister, really looked at her for the first time in years. I saw someone who had lost everything she'd been handed, who had learned the hard way that shortcuts and sabotage lead nowhere worth going. I saw someone who was finally, genuinely, taking responsibility. "Claire," I said slowly, "what you did almost destroyed everything I'd built. You tried to ruin me out of jealousy, using our parents as weapons. You forged documents, committed federal crimes, and attempted to interfere with my company and my life." She nodded, not looking away. "I know, all of it. I know. I can't forgive you," I continued. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. That's not something I'm ready to give. But," I paused, choosing my words carefully, "I can acknowledge that you're trying to change, and I can wish you well in building something honest for yourself." A tear did escape then, sliding down her cheek. "That's more than I deserve." "Probably," I agreed. "But holding on to anger hasn't served me as well as building something positive has. So I'm choosing to let this be enough, this conversation, this acknowledgement. We don't need to be in each other's lives, but we don't need to be enemies either." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "Your keynote tomorrow. I'm going to..."